Well, first of all, can I just say I'm delighted to welcome everybody to this annual Mahatma Gandhi Distinguished Lecture of the University of Southampton India Centre. The university is strongly committed to deepening and diversifying our partnerships with Indian higher education institutions, government and NGOs and industries. And our guiding principle is sharing and promoting scientific knowledge for social and economic impact, focusing on inclusive growth and sustainable development. And we're working very closely with several Indian institutions, including Invest India and the state governments, in strengthening research capacity and employability skills, targeting the next generation. So it's 2 years now since we set up the centre, and this is our second annual Mahatma Gandhi Distinguished Lecture. And we all know that Mahatma Gandhi is globally renowned for non-violence, truth and social justice, and also is the admirable father of the nation of India. But not many people know that the very first idea of sustainable development was articulated by Mahatma Gandhi. The editorial published in the top journal Nature a year ago referenced Gandhi as the innovator and supporter of sustainability science. You may also not know that Gandhi first set foot in Britain on the 29th of September 1888 in Southampton. We have a Mahatma Gandhi tree on our main campus, which was planted last year by the then Honourable Indian High Commissioner to the UK on the eve of the 150th birth anniversary of Gandhi. We also have an original special collection of Gandhi's letters at our library. The Mahatma Gandhi Distinguished Lecture is a tribute to acknowledge the heightened spirits of this very ordinary person with extraordinary qualities and visions. The first distinguished lecture in the series was delivered by the then Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India, Mr. Arabinda Mitra, and today we're honoured to have Dr. Arabinda Mitra to deliver the Mahatma Gandhi Distinguished Lecture. So I'll pass the floor now to Professor Mark Spearing, our Vice President, Research and Enterprise.
Many thanks, Jane. And it is a great pleasure to add my welcome to Dr. Arabinda Mitra to the University of Southampton, albeit virtually, to deliver today's Mahatma Gandhi Distinguished Lecture. I'm delighted that Dr. Mitra has agreed to give this lecture, and also the title he has chosen, Realising Sustainable Development Goals Through Science and Technology. This resonates very strongly with the ethos that we have as a university. We are proudly a strongly research-intensive university, but are particularly characterised by conducting high-quality fundamental research that allows us to make a difference, to change the world for the better. Whether this is through working on translational medical sciences, which has allowed us to contribute strongly to COVID-19 treatments and mitigations, or through demography work that informs policy, and a big shout out to Jane, who you've just heard from, and the Centre for Population Change that last week won an ESRC Impact Award. All relevant to this lecture, our engineers and ocean earth sciences and many others who are undertaking fundamental work to provide solutions to the world's most pressing challenges, that of global sustainability. By way of welcome for Dr. Mitra, or introduction to Dr. Mitra, he is extremely well qualified to talk on this topic. He has a distinguished career, including a PhD in Earth Sciences at Cambridge, at the same time as Rachel Mills, who you will hear from shortly. He was appointed as Scientific Secretary in the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India in June 2018, with the mandate to develop national missions in science and technology, provide synergistic policy interventions, and to provide periodic advice to the Prime Minister's Office. Prior to his appointment, Dr. Mitra was the advisor and head of international bilateral cooperation of the Department of Science and Technology, DST. His responsibilities involved overseeing India's international STI engagements with 44 separate countries across the globe, and also with the whole continent of Africa. Dr. Mitra was first appointed as director in the Department of Science and Technology in 2001, where he particularly focused on enriching the scope and content of the DST US National Science Foundation cooperation. And later in 2004, Dr. Mitra was appointed as the founding executive director of the binational Indo-US Science and Technology Forum, where he was able to bring a paradigm shift in strengthening the Indo-American cooperation in science, technology and innovation. We are very grateful to Dr. Mitra for accepting our invitation to deliver the Mahatma Gandhi Distinguished Lecture, and I extend my warm welcome to you on behalf of the university. I'm now going to hand over to Rachel Mills, who will chair the lecture. Rachel.
Thank you, Mark. And it's a real delight to have you here, Dr. Mitra. So as Mark said, first of all, I'll introduce myself. So my name's Rachel Mills. I'm the Sustainability Champion for the university, and I'm the Dean of one of the 5 faculties, Environmental and Life Sciences. But myself and Arabinda Mitra met first in the late 80s, let's call it the late 80s, in Cambridge, where we both studied with a fabulous supervisor, Professor Harry Elderfield, who's no longer with us. And Arabinda, there are 3 of our colleagues from that time here on this call. I can see Paul Wilson, I can see Damon Teagle, and I can see Matthew Cooper, and I'm sure they'll be asking you questions later on.
Wonderful.
But first of all, I just wanted to say something about why this is very timely. So we've just launched our sustainability strategy here at the University of Southampton. And that sustainability strategy articulates a new ambition to reach net zero by 2030. And that's working in partnership with the city here in Southampton, within which we live. And that ambition is going to need some clever thinking, some technological solutions, some clever science, and also cooperation with our colleagues across the region and internationally. And we're going to need to work together to achieve this. And so I thought it was very timely to have you come and give this prestigious distinguished lecture today, and to build and forge those links between Southampton and India. So let me just say a quick thing about our new strategy. That we have 6 goals that are based on the Sustainable Development Goals, and they're around reaching net zero. They're around quantifying our Scope 3 emissions and reducing them. They're around education. They're around research and enterprise. They're around our investment policy. And we're going to really shift our behaviour in each of these domains. And I'd love to share that strategy with you, and I'll email that to you after this lecture. But with that, I mean, this is about hearing from you and hearing about your vision for the future. So I'm going to stop talking now. I'm going to say to the audience, please do put questions in the chat. I'll monitor that so I know who to come to for questions at the end of the 30 minutes presentation. But I'm really delighted to hand the floor to you, Dr. Mitra, now, and I'm going to turn my camera off and over to you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. And let me first begin by saying how much honored and privileged I find myself to having been invited to deliver the Mahatma Gandhi Distinguished Lecture at Southampton. This is 150 years of Gandhi's anniversary, and it is really, I'm so happy to be, speaking in this occasion to our friends and colleagues in Southampton. Well, as Rachel alluded to, I came to your country in my formative stages of my career, and it's so important and crucial that, for young people to be exchanged with each other's countries, so that, they carry on this legacy of cooperation and togetherness. And your mind and heart always remains connected to UK, even as a professional when you work in a diverse setup. And it has been a fascinating journey ever since in terms of building up this relationship between UK and India. And I had the fortune to have been involved in many of the in many of these exercises in building this science technology innovation partnership. I fondly recall, just in the prologue that I wrote in my PhD thesis, I quoted the lines from Mahatma Gandhi, from Nobel laureate Arabinda Mitra, and I said, coming to UK, I came to your door as a stranger, I lived in your house as a guest, I leave your shores as a friend. And this friendship that I have enjoyed between UK and India, its diverse universities, its scientific strength, its culture, its tradition has been really phenomenal. And to that extent, again, I would like to thank the University of Southampton for having invited me to deliver this lecture. So, as many of you may be already aware, that in the world of international diplomacy, the 215 New York UN General Conference was by all means historic, as the world leaders, pledged transformational actions across an integrated set of economic, environmental and social issues with the aim to end poverty, stop environmental degradation, and boost human well-being. It was agreed upon, therefore, to set a package of 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which we call as SDGs, and associated 169 targets for ending hunger, eliminating extreme poverty, reduce inequality, tackle climate change, and halt loss of biodiversity and ecosystems, all to be met by 2030. Mind, all to be met by 2030. With timeline just a decade away, I am afraid that the lofty goals to end hunger, protect climate, and preserve biodiversity are quite out of pace, with estimated 430 million people still expected to live in extreme poverty by 2030. It is also true that some targets for economic growth contrast with the sustainability efforts, and there needs to be a fine balance between the two. In the meanwhile, the unprecedented pandemic has unleashed a new dimension to the human developmental crisis. The pandemic has posed one of the biggest challenges to the entire mankind. On some aspects of Human Development Index, conditions today are equivalent to the levels of deprivation, with the gains made over the last 2 decades all gone astray, I'm afraid. An outstanding 110 million people have been pushed into poverty because of the pandemic. 1.6 billion children are out of school education. With an estimated $10 trillion loss in the world economy, it has led to deep recession, manifested in biggest job crisis globally. In India, we are seeing many kids across the country actually committing suicide because they are not able to plug themselves into the digital education that is now the practice of the day. In fact, the pandemic was superimposed on the already existing unresolved tensions between people and technology, between people and the planet, between the haves and have-nots. These tensions have shaped a new dimension of inequality pertaining to existing capabilities and the new necessities of this century. At the same time, the response to the crisis also carries the potential to shape new strategies on how these tensions can be addressed and how inequalities in human development can be reduced. Particularly, I believe, by deploying the soft prowess of science, technology, and innovation, we can usher global good in meeting the basic needs of the society and the citizenry. Today's most pressing issues and developmental challenges which nations face in one way or the other have a scientific and technological dimension. Science and technology-led innovation offers greater opportunity to address these multifaceted challenges which are now truly cross-border in nature. S&T is increasingly recognized as the driver and pillar of growth across diverse sectors covering agriculture, nutrition, communication, education, energy, health, water, transport, manufacturing, climate change, disaster management, you name it. And particularly for a diverse country like India, science and technology is expected to touch the lives of people and seen to be a tool that enables the ease of living for the common citizen. Evidently, therefore, the span of science and technology policy interventions, both in its breadth and depth, has become increasingly complex to be able to address the respective national needs and aspirations by being inclusive in the national context, and at the same time, also to meet the international obligations as a responsible state actor. To make this happen, the Science and Technology Advisory Mechanism has to envision the creation of domain-specific technology platforms for accessible service delivery through effective R&D knowledge convergence from diverse scientific sectors. This, of course, requires an end-to-end science and technology embedded strategy across various arms of the government, including social, economic, and infrastructure sectors. The polity today expects the adoption of science and technology paradigm across the value chain by involving the ecosystem players, including, most importantly, the academia, the R&D laboratories, the private sector enterprises, the startups, and most importantly, the society, in order to unlock the potential by creating a virtuous cycle of supply and demand to feed the economy and create new jobs. Therefore, the aspirations and expectations from the scientific and technological community are now even more demanding and challenging. As the 21st century witnesses a new era characterized by the rapid development of emerging technologies in the physical, digital, and biological spheres that will transform human life profoundly, consistent efforts are necessary to utilize the best potential of such technologies in order to address and mitigate humanitarian challenges that mankind faces today. In this context, the importance of science, technology, and innovation, STI, in achieving the 2030 Agenda for UN Sustainable Development Goal, to which most nations, including India, are committed, throws open a new window of opportunities, I must say, for cross-border collaborations in science, research, and development. Notably, the 2017 UN Forum on STI, for the first time ever, underlined that science, technology, innovation roadmaps and action plans are needed at the subnational, national, and international levels, and should also include measures for tracking progress. The 2018 forum further emphasized that countries should develop STI for SDG roadmaps, which would serve as a tool for various stakeholders in integrating science, technology, and innovation into the national development plans and strategies. These discussions have shown that science, technology, and innovation can potentially contribute in achieving virtually every single goal and target, either directly or indirectly. Last year, the UN Global Sustainable Development Report, GSDR, has come up with innovative strategy for employing STI to attain the goals. A focus on smaller and more integrated targets, nearly about 26 out of the 169, has been identified for scientific and technological interventions. Particularly, cross-cutting goals in the emerging nexus of food, water, energy, health, along with education, and in addressing the global commons like biodiversity conservation and climate change, can be fast-tracked through targeted scientific and technological research. GSDR recommendations evidently can be best implemented if the R&D strategy and the national economic policy interfaces are carefully aligned. To take this forward, the UN Interagency Task Team has recently established a global pilot program on STI for developing the SDG roadmaps. And this effort is actually steered by Japan, the European Union, and the World Bank, along with the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, the UNDESA. I'm very happy to say that India has been inducted as a pilot country, along with Indonesia, Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, and Serbia, to prepare national roadmap template on STI for SDGs. And my office has been very closely involved in making this happen. The Global Pilot Program on STI for SDG roadmaps is an initiative that integrates the national aspirations and programs with selected sustainable development goals and is inspired by harnessing science, technology, and innovation for inclusive development, keeping in mind the needs, dreams, and aspirations of the people, particularly women, youth, and the marginalized population. As a partner country in this international initiative, India intends to build capabilities and skills for harnessing existing indigenous technologies, as well as to make effective use of the potential offered by emerging technologies, keeping into consideration the associated risks and challenges. In recent years, India has played a very crucial role at the negotiations for establishment of the Technology Facilitation Mechanism, TFM, along with some like-minded countries, raising the need for adequate and equitable resource mobilization for technology development and deployment across borders. The international engagement strategies could be imbibed as a viable mechanism to achieve co-development of technology, joint research initiatives in frontier domains, supported by cross-border open innovation. Effective use of technology facilitation mechanism in high opportunity and high priority areas to achieve the SDGs will be transformative and will empower many deserving and desiring developing countries. This provides India a very unique opportunity to build indigenous capabilities and skills for harnessing what I call affordable, accessible, and available technologies, the 3 ACEs, for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. It calls upon countries now, therefore, to develop pathways for integrating STI interventions to strengthen their efforts towards economic and social development, as well as for achieving SDGs, and build a synergy between the two. Identifying, prioritizing, and employing scientific research and technology-led innovation will be an inevitable tool, not only to achieve the goals with timeliness, but also in measuring the sustainability matrices quantitatively and in a very scientific manner. Developing STI strategies for SDG roadmap is therefore a critical exercise that requires commitment from governments and all stakeholders, including the proactive participation of the scientific and academic community, both from the developed and the developing countries. In the current health crisis, we see that governments around the world is increasingly relying on science, technology, and innovation as the fulcrum for the levers to effect social and economic change. For this to happen, I believe that scientists and society must connect closely and build stronger foundational relationship. The triad of education, which is knowledge dissemination, research, which is knowledge creation, and innovation, which is knowledge application, needs to be seamlessly connected and democratized ever than before. The research outcome and new knowledge generated from our laboratories and academic institutions is expected to provide both the know-how and show-how in securing food and nutrition, healthcare, education, clean environment, green energy, and water security, underlined by the driving principles of equity, inclusiveness, and affordability. It is evident that attainment of SDGs cannot be met by launching disparate schemes. It requires multi-pronged strategy and convergent set of interventions at different levels of government and the private sector on a sustained and scientific basis. Institutions globally are looking to support and work collaboratively towards some aspirational goals like eliminating single-use plastics, switching to renewables, and ushering digital empowerment, etc. To achieve this, the premier educational and technical institutions have to reorient their research ecosystems towards developing real-world solutions for the myriad issues that are looming large. This Herculean effort that lacks a parallel in modern history demands not only a significant commitment in terms of manpower and infrastructure, but also diligent mechanisms for leveraging international cooperation based on mutual trust and goodwill that fosters partnership on a win-win model. I dare to say that no nation alone has the capacity, infrastructure, and human resources to address the humongous challenges that the Earth as a planet and the mankind as a progenitor faces for its existence today. It is inevitable, therefore, that science, technology, and innovation have to increasingly become an intrinsic instrument both in the domestic and foreign policy enunciations of countries around the globe. This obviously would require proactive and dynamic engagement of the scientific and technological community, who will have to ultimately shape the contour. Engaging in international partnerships that leverages complementary strengths and, importantly, diverse perspective seems to have great potential and will be an inevitable tool for rapidly providing implementable solutions for societal problems, including those posed by COVID. Here, universities like yours can certainly and will have to play a very cardinal role. And I'm so happy to see that you have already embarked upon with a very strong commitment to work on the Sustainable Development Goals. I would like to add that in order to be globally competitive and relevant, India has been proactively engaged in value-based international partnerships and collaborations. This has helped Indian research at both bilateral and multilateral levels to be connected across. Today, we share a strong partnership with UK to address contemporary challenges and at the same time also advancing the frontiers of scientific knowledge. Our joint efforts indeed cover pertinent areas such as clean energy, food and sustainable agriculture practices, water quality and reuse, climate change and environmental responses, public health and well-being, all in the context of social and cultural changes that are taking place in our two countries. There is further opportunity for all of us to contribute and strengthen this important facet of our knowledge partnership, which helps to empower our people and society. As the world celebrates the 150th anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, the universal thought leader, one cannot fail to recollect his famous lines, and I quote, "Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's need, but not for every man's greed," unquote. While addressing the intelligentsia, he also said, and I quote, "I would prize every innovation of science made for the benefit of all," unquote. If one reads the two quotes together, it can be clearly concluded that Gandhi believed in the optimal use of resources for the benefit of the maximum number of people. As put forth by Dr. Ramesh Mashelkar, a fellow of the Royal Society and former Director General of the Indian Council for Scientific Industrial Research, Gandhiji's principle of sustainability was based on the underlying philosophy of more from less for more. I repeat, more from less for more. The 18 decentralized development goals, championed by Gandhi in 1920, enshrined the seminal principle of Sarvodaya, meaning the welfare for all through equity and inclusiveness. His great innovation of the time, as you would all know, the spinning wheel or the charkha, was the symbol of decentralized social and economic empowerment at the grassroots level across every village of India. We therefore see that Mahatma Gandhi was not against technology and machinery at all. His whole approach to machinery and the use of science was radically different. It was deeply revolutionary and profoundly humanly conscious. The pervasive reach of technology in the society, based on the sole criteria of affordable excellence, was his challenging mantra given to the scientific community. The world today, in many ways, has rediscovered the Gandhian philosophy. Almost after a century, the pronouncement of the SDG by the United Nations and the commitments made by the nations across the globe is a reflection of the universal relevance of Mahatma Gandhi today, even more than before. While India is committed to achieve these goals, the 2019 SDG India Index, released by the Niti Aayog, which is the policy framing body of the government, clearly reveals subnational disparities. Based on the SDG National Indicator Framework developed by Niti, no province or state is 100% on all 17 goals, and about 28% states are in the plus 65 bracket, and 71% are in the above 50 bracket. States that have yet to achieve even 50% of the target are classified as aspirants. India's endeavor for accomplishing the SDGs are guided by what Prime Minister Narendra Modi said in 2017, and I quote, "These goals reflect our evolving understanding of the social, economic, and environmental linkages that define our lives." The developmental mantra of the ruling dispensation today is Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, which translates into collective effort for inclusive development of all. India's efforts towards integrating SDI for achieving sustainable development goals have been recognized and imbibed in many of its current national missions and programs. Unlike in the past, I must say that these missions are based on knowledge convergence using technology platforms. The effort now is to bring upfront the need of integrating scientific and technological enablers towards effective delivery of these missions to the people. In the COVID era, which saw complete breakdown of supply chains, technology-led innovation has been identified as one of the 5 pillars for charting the path of self-reliant India, or in Hindi as it is called Atmanirbhar Bharat. Science and technology is clearly seen as the bridge between the government and the citizens. Evidently, the scientists and technologies have to play an increasingly pivotal role in meeting the national development aspirations, particularly in sectors like agriculture, nutrition, affordable healthcare, clean energy, water, and sanitation. Significantly, the technological tools under the Digital India mission has empowered financial inclusion like direct benefit transfers covering 357 marginalized people, including farmers. The linking of individual bank accounts under Jan Dhan Yojana with the unique biometric identification number of each citizen called Aadhaar, along with the mobile phones, popularly referred to as the JAM triad, has been established as powerful technological innovation that has rapidly scaled up digital payments and other banking services in the country. As I said, new 357 million people, of the country have become a part of this mission. This has been a very powerful enabler and game changer for securing social security to the most needy and deprived. Under the Digital India mission, 350,000 common service centers, CSCs, have been established, which is a network of digital kiosks providing digital services to citizens at affordable prices. The network today offers a robust rural access and delivery channel for technologies targeting agriculture, health, education, water, rural livelihoods, and other digital services at scale to reach a demography which is vital to ensure inclusive, sustainable development. Over 14 million farmers are today linked through the CSC to the Electronic National Agriculture Marketing (ENAM) platform, giving them best returns of their farm produce through unrestricted access to both national and international markets. The ongoing effort is to develop an agri data stack platform to meet the farmer-centric needs in rural and peri-urban areas. The ethos behind this initiative is to focus on developing a robust platform as a centralized single point for a national repository of agriculture technologies, both farm and non-farm, including animal husbandry, nutrition, and regenerative farming products. The key objective is to provide real-time information that will empower and enable the farmers to adopt a sustainable farm practice that can help towards enhanced produce and increase their income. The available scientific knowledge base in diverse set of databases, mobile app-based efficient field data collection system, space-based technologies, including advanced techniques for data analysis, enables highly favorable environment for bringing digital tech innovations required for sustainable agricultural practices in the remotest corners of the country. You would recall that 2 ambitious water missions, including the Jal Shakti Abhiyan, aim to promote conservation of water, and Jal Jeevan mission aim to provide clean tap water to all rural households of the country. Importantly, both these missions focus on the deployment of latest advances in technology and providing innovative scientific solutions required to identify and meet specific water challenges in different geographic locations, both in terms of water quality and water quantity. Both missions are centered to provide contextual solutions which are sustainable and based on engagement and active involvement of the local end user and the society. As a wake-up call to the pandemic challenge, the National Digital Health Blueprint has now been modified and will be implemented through the National Digital Health Portal. The vision is to integrate promotive, preventive, and curative healthcare technologies that will enable the last mile delivery of healthcare needs of individual citizens through a digital health stack. Once implemented, this will bring transformative changes in both rural and urban healthcare system of the country, ensuring access to better and affordable healthcare powered by technology-led innovation. Lately, and very importantly, the National Artificial Intelligence Strategy has defined India's own brand of AI roadmap with a tagline of AI for all. It implies technology leadership in AI to ensure socioeconomic development and inclusive growth of the country by focusing on core SDG sectors like healthcare, agriculture, education, public mobility, clean energy. India's approach to implementation of AI and other cyber-physical systems is therefore unique, guided by optimization of social goods rather than maximization of top-line growth, thereby ensuring job creation and not job deprivation. The underlying message of the policy paper echoes the government's vision of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, enabled by cutting-edge scientific and technological inputs. At this point in time, when inequality is the defining challenge for the mankind, we all need to think outside the box solutions to ensure that through partnerships, both at national and international levels, we can assure equitable access to the fruits of science, technology, and innovation. There is a dimension of the right to science which can inspire the STI roadmap for SDG programs. Thus, science with a human face, when realized in tangible outcomes by the needy and poor, will be the proof for the key role of STI in development, particularly in attending the SDGs. And that is what was the goal and aspiration which the great Mahatma laid in front of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for such an inspirational talk that gave us some great quotes to think about. I've got a lot of questions here in the chat that I'm going to try and sort of synthesize. We've got about 20 minutes to get through this and more things are coming in. I'd like to start maybe with Damon Teagle and Bacca's question around coal-fired energy production in India and the aspiration to replace that with renewable and the role of CCS. So Damon, do you want to say something briefly that sort of captures those two questions around what you're trying to ask?
There's quite a lot of talk in the UK government about direct air capture. But of course it's insane to take CO2 out of the atmosphere while we're still putting it into the atmosphere. India has an impressive development of renewables, but still the basis of its energy structure is from burning coal, and there's been huge growth in coal. But most of this, possibly all of this, is without carbon capture and storage. It just seems to me that this is a, most of this generation capacity is young and could run for many, many decades. The UK has the same problem about not embracing carbon capture and storage. We understand that coal provides India with energy security, which of course as do renewables. But if this, if there's going to be a real difference in CO2 outputs, carbon capture and storage and or utilization really needs to be embraced by both the UK and India.
Yeah, you're very true. Coal would remain as an important element in our overall energy basket for some more years to come. But there is a very ambitious, as you rightly alluded to, clean energy technology absorption in the system to slowly replace coal. But what we are looking at the coal is now really focusing on what we call the clean coal technologies, where the carbon emission itself would be much reduced through a major mission called the ultra supercritical thermal power generation. This is a new technology that we are currently working, and in fact, my office is actually coordinating that effort that would really reduce in, the less release of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. But at the same time, strategies to capture carbon is also important, for which carbon sequestration is the only alternative. And luckily, India does have a huge geological, sort of a setup that can really help in carbon sequestration. At the same time, also, we are in a way moving in some direction into starting a new hydrogen economy-based infrastructure, where we are looking at generating green hydrogen. We are not looking into the brown hydrogen, so to speak, where coal would be used to generate hydrogen. So yes, it is true that coal would continue to remain in the energy basket of India for some time, but at this point of time, there is a great focus to look at the various clean coal technologies to avoid as much as carbon generation, and at the same time looking at technologies to capture carbon. So this is an important area where I think UK and India have also a lot in common to share and work together.
Yeah, and maybe we move to Baka Bahaj, who maybe Baka, you could come in with your second question, which is around the role of central government versus local government in India. And over to you, Baka. Yeah.
Okay, so my interest is around policy. How is policy affected by science and engineering evidence? And it is really quite interesting to see how that impacts the evidence around cities and the energy consumption in cities. You highlighted quite a lot of roadmap and aspirations around SDGs, and quite a lot of that will be implemented, especially around digital in cities. Cities also need to be looking at the energy footprint, carbon footprint in a way that's more important than anywhere else, because 75% of the energy consumption happens in cities. So what is the policy guidance that you give to the central government, and how is that filtered down to the local government to allow implementation of your 2030 policy?
A very good question. In fact, as I speak, India is currently formulating its new science, technology, innovation policy. And for the first time ever, the consultation process that has been embarked upon has been most extensive in establishing this policy, where we have involved in this process stakeholders right across from states to industries to society at large in order to frame these policies. What is very interesting today is the involvement of the states, where they are themselves coming out with their own policies that attribute and address some of these challenges, be it in agriculture, be it in water, be it in education, and so many other aspects, including the Smart Cities program that is getting implemented all across the country. So what's very, very critical and important, we do realize that in a federal system like India, things need to be more bottom up than in top down. So we are in a constant process, and the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor has a very important role, therefore, to connect with the states in formulating these policies and strategies, so that at the end, it is the states who implement it, is not the center. The center gives an overall guideline and a broad roadmap, but the enabling policies and the infrastructure down the road is provided by the states. But the very positive thing that has happened, as I said, is a very proactive response of the states, which was not there in the past when we did the last 2013 Science, Technology, Innovation Policy. And the fact that the states are now joining hands with center, we are very optimistic that many of these policy frameworks that we define would be ultimately implemented by the states in a more cohesive manner. One very interesting thing that has taken place, just if I recollect, you said, how do we connect the science policy with the state and people and society at large? In the 2013 science policy, we first time actually alluded to the word innovation and entrepreneurship. And look today where India stands in terms of the new startups, all the technology-based startups that have sprung up in the country, and all supported by the states across, And these startups have provided phenomenal solutions to the COVID challenges, which we saw over the last 8 months. Mm-hmm. The entire mobilization of the infrastructure in terms of manufacturing, in terms of new technologies, in terms of deploying them, in terms of affordability, has actually come from many of these startups, which have in a very big way been supported by the states. So all the states have now a startup policy that is pretty much aligned in supporting science, technology, and innovation to achieve, what I said, affordable, accessible innovation, which is very, very critical for India. Over.
So is the government listening?
Sorry?
Is the government listening?
Oh yes, government is involved. Last 10 years, government has been involved. It has been a decade of innovation, as you know, which has been, it's because of the proactive policies. I must confess that having been involved in international cooperation, I must say, many countries say that the government has no business to get into innovation, because innovation is non-linear and the governments always think linearly. Yeah. But I must confess that, the support which the government has given to nurture this ecosystem of startup and techno-entrepreneurship over the last 10 years is really showing, results, and the government is committed to support that. That is the only way we feel that India can really make a mark.
So since you've made the link between the pandemic and the Sustainable Development Goals, let's go to the first question on the chat, which is from Shri. And Shri, do you want to maybe articulate it in a more optimistic way, which is maybe, I think the question is, what have we learned from the pandemic that can help us deal with delivery of the SDGs by 2030? I think the way you framed it is probably a little bit, but anyway, Shri, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I do not want to sound depressing or negative, Rachel, as you say, but I hope I'm being realistic because in the world we live in, there is an increasing, shall we say, mindset of nationalism. And of course, as Professor said, it's about working together, so United Nations. And there we are when WHO tried its best from the very start of the pandemic. And the challenges, I don't want to sound depressing, it faced in trying to bring the countries together to have a unified effort. And I suppose I was just flagging up the challenges probably will obviously replicate itself or won't it replicate itself. So I hope I didn't sound too pessimistic, but realistic, and maybe Professor can enlighten us and, share his thoughts.
Oh, sure. I mean, any collaborative effort has its challenges, as you rightly said. You have to be both inclusive as far as the national context is concerned. At the same time, as a global player, you have certain responsibilities. And today one cannot but, forget that the COVID in many ways have connected the world. And we do realize that countries have to collaborate. Yes, essentially, this is not bad that countries have independently started their own pursuit in developing their vaccines, in developing drugs, and so on and so forth. But there is also a realization of the fact that, in order to make this available across the length and breadth of each country and across the globe, it is inevitable that countries need to collaborate. And just an example I would quote, I keep on quoting the vaccine example. Even though the development of the vaccines are taking place in different corners of the world, the manufacturing will take place in some other part of the world. And these are the type of connects that are required today to make these systems to be effective for making the end mile delivery to the citizenry. And therefore, each country brings on the platform its own perspective, besides its own complementary strength. And it's very important that we leverage this in an effective and efficient manner. And I think COVID has shown this. There could be some exceptions to some countries, but generally I would say the level of interactions and the fact that international collaborations is no more a fad or a fashion, but a necessity of the day. And this realization is increasingly coming, and the fact that science, technology, and innovation can be best advanced through collaboration than competition is what is emerging on the forefront. But certainly there are issues on IP, there are issues on technology protection. Science may be agnostic to borders, but technology is not. I would agree to it. But there are ways and means through which, if we collaborate, we can make these technologies more affordable. And what India brings to the table, as I always say, is its own brand of innovation, which is marked by its accessibility and affordability. And I keep on quoting this always, that when India launched its mission to Mars, it was the first mission ever, any country successfully launched for the first time. The cost of this mission, as the Prime Minister said, was less than making the Hollywood movie Gravity. And this is what the Indian innovation is. If you took a car ride or a taxi ride in Delhi, you would pay almost like 16 rupees a kilometer. A three-wheeler, might cost you around 5 or 7 rupees a kilometer. And if you took a ride on that rocket to Mars, it would have costed you 3 rupees a kilometer. And that is what the Indian innovation is, how really you can make innovations affordable and how you can really therefore work with countries and bring these technologies to a level where it is accessible. And today the pandemic, the amount of economic pressure that it has created, this pressure would be across the world, whether it's developed or developing countries, people will look for affordable, smart innovation. And this can be only generated through this collaborative process.
So I think we've got time for maybe one more question, Sabu, is that right? I'm going to go to Paul Wilson's question because that's dealing with something else that's on our minds very much in the UK. So Paul, there's a question about post-Brexit future for the UK. Paul, do you want to say something?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, I was just wondering, we hear a lot about this kind of concept of global Britain from the current government. And I wondered whether, does that signal anything concrete to you in terms of the prospect for a stronger bilateral cooperation on science and technology towards working on these strategic development goals?
Well, certainly I would say, more than historically that we have been connected, I think today the contemporary challenges which the both nation faces, politically, socially, culturally, I think it is inevitable that UK and India would be more closely linked. in terms of collaboration on all facets, including science, technology, and innovation. And it has been evident even in pre-COVID, I would say, even pre-Brexit. But, post-Brexit, I think two nations definitely stand to, gain in a big way. It's a win-win, as I see in Britain and India working together. And the reason I say so is because, economically today we are so connected. We can see so many of our knowledge-based companies that are present in each other's country, which actually drive the economy in a big way. So the opportunities are galore. The challenges that we are facing, for example, antimicrobial resistance, and now the viral resistance, challenges that we are facing with clean energy and stuff like that, agriculture, food, nutrition will provide ample opportunity for us to further strengthen. And also in some of the frontier areas of science, which is the emerging areas that in the digital space, for example, artificial intelligence, quantum frontiers, in the cyber-physical system, in big data analytics. There is a huge scope and there's a huge opportunity for us to, work and create a win-win situation. So I think both countries have realized this, and I'm quite confident myself. In fact, as I perhaps alluded to, is tomorrow itself I have a dialogue with your chief scientific advisor to see how we can actually move some of our relationships to the next level. So I am quite optimistic about it, that this is going to be the way ahead between our two countries.
So I think that's our time up for questions, I'm afraid. I'm going to pass back to Professor Sabu Padamas, but I just want to say from myself, that was a fascinating conversation. And I think we would really look forward to welcoming you here in Southampton, where those of you who I didn't get your questions, perhaps we can continue the conversation when you visit here, when we get through this current stage of COVID. Over to you, Sabu.
Sure, Rachel. Thank you. Thank you very much for conducting this and holding this.
Thank you, Dr. Mitra. I think, I think what we say is that this is a time now for coffee and tea, in a normal environment. But I think, but we do hope, Dr. Arabinda, that you will visit Southampton in the near future. And we are incredibly grateful, and thank you for that remarkably inspiring and intellectually stimulating lecture. And we are extremely grateful to you for taking time from your busy schedules and responsibilities. We know that how busy you are at the office, but your lecture highlighted today several critically important points and areas, and the inevitable efforts needed to really accelerate science and technology for inclusive growth and sustainable development, particularly the need for engaging youth and women in the development goals. I think which is something really, the sustainable development goals is something very, very important. Your lecture also highlighted the AI for all as a concept. I think I've never heard that one, but as a slogan for maximizing the the kind of benefits for mankind and addressing the challenges of social, economic, and health inequalities. But as you've correctly alluded to, that India's potential for harnessing affordable, accessible, and green technology is critical for sustainable and social and economic growth. But also India's leadership joining global community, including the UK, in this effort is reassuring and admirable. You've also made a crucial point that globally, global level collaboration and cooperation, not competition, is the need of the hour. And alongside, I believe that sensible anthropogenic consumer behaviors and management of our natural environment is crucial. And I think it was also very timely, given the relevance of this important lecture, when you referred to Mahatma Gandhi in his quote that Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's needs, but not everyone's greed. I think that was really timely and a great reminder to all of us. But on behalf of the university, our faculties, especially Professor Rachel Mills, who is the who's known to you for a long time, and also the India Center for Inclusive Growth and Sustainable Development, we extend our sincere appreciation and heartfelt gratitude to you. I think particularly I'd like to also thank, for instance, our dynamic India Center team, especially Joe and Alec, and my colleague and co-director Amarjit Singh, who is also the CEO of the India Business Group, who couldn't join us today due to some unavoidable circumstances. But also let me take this opportunity to thank everyone who have joined today, and especially Rebecca. I don't know whether she could manage to really get this because there were some issues with the Zoom link. Rebecca Fairbairn, who's the director of the UKRI India. And I think I'm also very pleased to see Aditya Malkani, who is actually joined, who is the India director of the Association of Commonwealth Universities. So I think together we have this, we hope that this to continue this journey, in collaborating with you, and also I think in terms of seeking your guidance and wisdom in moving forward. So let me once again, on behalf of the university, I'd like to express heartfelt thanks. I'll just quickly hand over to Jane for final comments. I think, just Jane.
Thank you, Sabu. Well, it only remains for me to say heartfelt thanks. We had a fantastic conversation. It was really stimulating discussion, ranging from COVID through to coal, through to all sorts of things. So thank you, colleagues. And Dr. Mitra, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to continuing our collaboration. But thank you. Thank you.
Thank you to the leadership of Southampton for having me. And someday I look forward to be there physically. That is what I missed today. I thought, thank you so much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please stay safe. Thank you.
Bye. 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 Stay safe. Bye.
Thank you.